Police have released new dash cam video of the arrest of Sandra Bland. She, the woman who hung herself in a Texas jail 3 days after getting arrested. Here's part of that clip.
The reason for your stop is you failed to signal your lane change. You seem very irritated.
I am. I really am.
You mind putting out your cigarette, please? Don't mind.
I'm in my car. Why do I have to put out my cigarette?
Well, you can step on out now.
I don't have to step out of my car.
Step out of the car. Step out of the car.
No, you don't have the right.
Step out of the car.
You do not have the right to do that.
I do have the right. Now step out or I will remove you.
I
will light you up. Get out.
Wow.
Now.
Wow.
Get out of the car.
Really? Failure to signal. You're doing all of this for
Get over there.
You just slammed me, knocked my head in the ground. I got epilepsy.
Good. Good.
Now, the police say she was going to be let off with just a warning, but they charged her with assault on a public servant after she resisted and kicked the cop in the shin. Now, the cell phone video shows cops standing over her and restraining her before hauling her off, and things escalated fast in this incident. The officer and Bland started arguing almost immediately, and there's reports coming out tonight that apparently she had previously tried to take her own life. She had, on video, there's accounts that she said that she was suffering from depression. We don't know what happened in there. There was no video. That will all come out. But I had an interesting conversation yesterday, and we're talking in the aftermath, 1 year later after the Garner incident, about the mayor's contention that things had improved in the past year. But May, I'll start with you. It seems so much of this friction that we have, especially between communities of color and law enforcement, not relegated, but for this argument, let's keep it to that. It's this premise of respect. Communities of color largely felt that they haven't received the respect that if they were a lighter shade they'd get here. Police don't believe that they're receiving the respect when they come upon the scene. We saw it play out in microcosm there in a certain way. The officer didn't seem to be challenging the woman, asked her to even put out a cigarette. She said no, and things escalated from there. What should that line be? And if you give a quick lecture for the folks at home, what do the police have a right to do as it relates to talk to you, how you have a right to talk to them, and do they have a right to remove you from the car forcibly if necessary?
Well, number one, I don't think very many people interact with each other as we should. I think that we tend to be very aggressive, very confrontational. We see it when someone else is confrontational toward us and not when we're confrontational toward them. But as a law enforcement officer, you take an oath to basically protect people and to enforce the law. And that means your skin has to be a little bit thicker. That means if someone's maybe a little short with you, a little nasty with you, you don't pull your taser out and get upset with them. It's not a parent and a child. And if it was a parent and a child under these circumstances, if instead that was his daughter, there would be a very different take on this, and everybody would say that that child should be taken out of his custody. So here we have a woman who stopped for some traffic reason, and they claimed they were going to give her a pass. She's smoking in her own car. That's not illegal. And it's because she won't put out the cigarette that all of this stuff is thrown into motion. Now, if you look at the video, from what I can see at least, I don't see her kicking him in the video.
We didn't play all of it, but you could hear in the audio on the side of it. Yeah, and there's some debate about it, but apparently more officers came on the scene, reportedly, without video evidence. She kicked the officers, and we saw what happened.
But that would have been after she's already taken out of the car and her head's already slammed down on the ground. So she's technically under arrest when a reasonable person who's innocent can't leave, doesn't feel they can actually leave. And that clearly was the case here over whether she would put out a cigarette. So
but what about the expectation on the person being detained or the person being questioned? I remember, for whatever it's worth, I never messed with the cops. I was scared of screwing around with the cops, and I would. In the idea, whenever I saw a buddy talking back to the cops, we thought he was a lunatic. Now it seems it's okay, and so much of this deals with perception. I had a young officer tell me that he had an interaction. The guy that he was talking to put his hand up and basically waved in his face. He kept the discussion going. Later on, the senior officer grabbed him by the collar and said, "You have to be, you have to have respect at the scene, and you have to control the situation." So my point is, there's mixed messaging going on here. What are people allowed to do when they talk to the cops?
People have to comply with a lawful order. They don't have to love you. They don't have to,
So she
quote
didn't have
unquote,
to
tell
put
you
out a
how great
cigarette?
you are. No, she didn't.
She had to put out her cigarette.
Well, she did
Here's
not.
why she had to put out her cigarette. It's very, no pun intended, it's very black and white what police can do in a traffic stop like this. They can, if he saw her as he claims he did, see her committing a traffic infraction by switching lanes, he could have effected a full-blown custodial arrest at that point. He could have arrested her. He certainly was entitled to ask her to get out of the car. And once given that premise, if he's entitled to ask her to get out of the car and she's waving around a lit cigarette, she could burn him with that.
Yeah,
So
but
for his
he
own
asked
safety.
her that before she put the cigarette,
That's
before
why
she was in custody.
There's an objective test as to how this is done. If you're committing a traffic infraction, you can stop the car, get the person out of the car, and as I said, under clear Supreme Court precedent, if you want to, effect a full-blown custodial arrest, even if you're just going to give a traffic citation. The cigarette is a threat, theoretically, to the guy's safety. So he can order her out of the car. She said she wasn't getting out of the car
If we're
under
hiring
any
people
circumstances.
who are so afraid of the people they're
let me
serving
say
that they
this.
think a cigarette
agree.
is a threat,
I
then that
agree,
person
that's the
shouldn't
She
be
said,
called
you
on the
can't do
police.
this. You can't order me out of the car.
But he didn't do that yet.
No.
I disagree with you, Mark. I think you're absolutely, the Supreme Court precedent is true. He can effectuate an arrest. He can order her out of the car. What I saw, though, was that he basically looks at her and says, you look a little agitated. She says, I am.
Right.
He says, why don't you put out that cigarette? And she says, no, I don't want to. I don't think he was going to order her out of that car. I think he got mad that she wasn't putting out the cigarette, and he had to smell the smoke.
I don't know.
I mean, he yelled, I will light you up.
No, but
And then
that
he
was
threw her
after
to
she
the-
refused to
after,
get out
yeah.
of the car and refused to
And
obey
then
his
he
order.
threw her to the ground when she wasn't struggling with him visibly in this video.
I-
So
I
It's a
just
different
think-
thing. I agree.
So it's
It
excessive force
sounds
there.
to me like the force used during the escalation was excessive, and the police department
But
has already
it
said
also
so.
comes
That's-
down to,
that's-
maybe
I
there's an
don't think
overreaction for law enforcement, but people, I think, are sometimes under the impression they can resist
They
arrest.
can't. She has no right to do
They
anything.
can resist arrest. They can also refuse an order. They can do the following. Isn't that part of the problem also?
Yes,
There's an overreaction
absolutely.
by the police, sometimes egregious behavior. You're not going to be defended, but people believe that this is an optional test here.
But I didn't see her resisting arrest here, number
You
one.
have to get out of the car. It's not up to her if she
Well,
chooses
but
to
you
or
not getting out of the car is not resisting arrest. Resisting arrest is you physically doing something to prevent them from doing something lawful.
The definition is resisting arrest is resisting arrest is attempting to prevent the arrest of oneself. Now,
But now if you look at
if
the
he's
if you look at the
saying
jury
defy the
charge,
lawful
Exactly.
order,
It's
forget about arrest. We're not
but if
even
you look
there
at the
yet.
jury charge, there requires some actual action. It's not simply you saying no. That's not resisting
says,
arrest
"Get
in
out
and
of
of
the car."
itself.
She says, "I'm
Try
not
to-
getting
a
out
number
of
of
the
these
car."
cases.
She's not getting out of the
physically
car.
refusing to get out of the
refusing.
car. Well, it's physical. You won't get out of the car. The better answer to your question is this, I think, and I'm better than you. Overall, be respectful. There's a Washington Supreme Court case held 2 weeks ago that you can tell a cop to go blank himself, and not only is that not resisting arrest, it's not an actionable offense. So what? These police officers are there to protect you. Most of them are good. You might get pulled over when you don't think you should get pulled over. It's happened to well, with me, I should always get pulled over. But the point is, be respectful. There's no reason to do that. And so the big issue is, why is there a reason to do that lately? Why is it that there's so much tension between people and the police? And why is it manifesting itself where there should be a mutual respect,
Yep.
where he could have turned around and said, ma'am, I'm not...
Except there are a
let's
lot
tone
of
it down.
cases where people have
There's
done
ways to
nothing other
diffuse
than
the
say, I don't
situation.
want to let you into my house,
but
and
for
they
the
end up
most
having
part-
a door. Well, for the most part, we're not dealing with any of these issues. For the most part, the interactions are none of these things we see on TV. However, when you look at the position where the officers escalate things that didn't need to be escalated, they're the ones who we expect to be the adults here. Expect the officers are supposed to be the ones who de-escalate.
Everybody should be...
Right.
Well, but
we
the
also,
officers
but
are
you
the
know
ones
what?
we
You're
give
right,
guns
Mayo.
to.
You're right. And sometimes I think, you know, our expectations of officers are they're going to be supermen when called upon, and sometimes I think they manifest that when they don't need to be supermen. But on the flip side, I think we give a lot of people passes when they don't choose to listen to simple directives. And it can't be, as much as we'd like it to be, an optional test when you want to listen to the cop and when you don't. And that, to me, is so much of the crux of this.
Except, Richard, she didn't get a pass. She's dead. And the other people were talking
Except-
about Earl Garner didn't get a pass.
Now we're saying they killed her. That's a major
certainly
leap.
Mr. Garner didn't get a pass. He's
This
dead,
is
too.
not different
There are a whole bunch of
situation.
people. Tamir Rice didn't get a pass. He's playing with the gun. He's
Right.
dead.
You have,
I gotta hit a
Rich,
break here,
you
guys.
have mayors of major urban cities suggesting, insinuating, or directly saying it's okay to disobey lawful orders of the police. That is not going to inspire respect or mutual trust among anybody.
Okay, when I come back here, we're switching gears. Court ruling just opened up the door for prosecutors to gain access to private info when it comes to Facebook profiles. So here's the question. Can you get booked if they see something incriminating on Facebook? We'll get into that straight ahead.